The northern Russian village of Lesnoye always seemed frozen in time. Wooden houses leaned slightly from decades of snowstorms. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and the endless pine forest stood like a dark wall behind everything. In this quiet corner of the world lived Ekaterina, a young widow trying to raise her 6-year-old son, Timofey, after her husband's sudden death in a logging accident. She carried her grief quietly, like a heavy winter coat she could never take off. Every day she walked Timofey to the small schoolhouse near the church. And every day she saw the same thing, the way the boy shrank when other children approached. He was gentle, shy, and still mourning his father. The other boys, toughened by village life, used their words like stones. "Where's your father? Still dead?" One boy sneered the day before. Ekaterina had heard it. It shattered her inside. On this particular evening, she waited outside the school a little longer than usual. Snow was falling in soft white sheets, settling on her black coat. Across the road, she noticed Ivan Karolin, the village's solitary lumberjack. He was splitting firewood with slow, controlled strength, each swing of the axe sending a puff of snow into the air. He was a man built of silence, tall, broad-shouldered, with a beard that hid most of his expression. People said Ivan had spent years working deep in the taiga, alone for months at a time. Some whispered he preferred the company of trees to people. But Ekaterina had always sensed something gentler in him whenever their eyes met briefly at the market. That evening, Timofey came out of the school with tears he tried to hide. Ekaterina knelt, hugging him tightly. "What happened, my love?" "It's because Papa is gone," he whispered. "They say I don't have anyone." Those words stayed in her chest like a knife. Hours later, when night settled over the village and only a few windows glowed with light, Ekaterina walked toward Ivan's small wooden cabin. Her heart pounded. She knew how strange, how impossible her request would sound, yet desperation pushed each of her steps forward. She stopped before his door, breath turning to mist, and knocked softly. Ivan opened, surprise flickering in his dark eyes. "Ivan, I need your help," she said, voice trembling. "Just for a few days? Could you pretend to be my son's father?" "Only at school. Only to stop the bullying." Silence filled the space between them. Then Ivan nodded slowly. "If this will help the boy, yes, I'll do it." The next morning dawned pale and cold, the sky washed in the faint silver typical of northern Russia. Frost clung to the windows of the village houses as if winter refused to give up its grip. Ekaterina stood nervously by her gate, adjusting Timofey's scarf for the third time. Her heart thudded with a strange mix of fear and hope. Then she saw him. Ivan emerged from the forest path, his tall figure wrapped in a thick brown lumberjack coat. His breath rose in white clouds as he walked, boots crunching through the snow. He looked almost timid, as if unsure whether he truly belonged there. When Timofey spotted him, the boy froze. Ivan stopped a few steps away, cleared his throat, and said gently, "Ready for school, little man?" Timofey's eyes widened, shy, unsure, but he nodded. Slowly, Ivan reached out his large, calloused hand. After a moment's hesitation, the boy slipped his small hand into it. Ekaterina's chest tightened at the sight. As they walked through the village, curtains twitched. People stared openly. This was the most unusual sight Lesnoy had seen all winter. Children paused mid-rush. Old men on benches lifted their heads. 2 women whispering near the bakery stopped mid-sentence. The biggest reaction came at the schoolyard. The same boys who had mocked Timofey the day before stood speechless. Their confident smirks melted into uncertainty as Ivan's silent, towering presence filled the yard. He didn't glare. He didn't speak. He simply stood behind Timofey like an unmovable wall of protection. One of the bullies nudged the other. "Это кто?" "His father," the second whispered, suddenly unsure. Timofey's chin lifted just a little. Ekaterina watched from the gate, warmth blooming in her chest. Something had shifted, not just around Timofey, but inside Ivan as well. She saw how he softened when the boy looked up at him, how he adjusted his pace to match Timofey's small steps. After school, they walked home together. Timofey talked nonstop about lessons, about drawings, about a snow fort some kids were building. Ivan listened patiently, nodding, occasionally giving a quiet of encouragement. Ekaterina saw it clearly now. Ivan wasn't just pretending. Something in him was awakening, something long buried under years of loneliness. And as snowflakes swirled gently around them, she realized this simple agreement might change all of their lives far more than she had expected. Days passed like soft snow drifting over the village. Ivan and Timofey fell into an unexpected rhythm. Morning walks to school, small chores, and quiet evenings by the fire. At first, Ivan approached everything with careful distance, as if afraid that stepping too close might shatter the fragile little world Ekaterina had built for her son. But each day, the barriers he had built around his heart began to crack. One evening, a storm rolled in from the north, blanketing the village in heavy snow. Electricity flickered and failed, leaving the small houses dark and cold. Ekaterina shivered as she wrapped Timothy in blankets, listening to the wind howl outside. The boy clutched his favorite toy bear, his eyes wide with unease. Without warning, a knock came at the door. Timothy jumped. Ekaterina opened it to find Ivan standing there, snow covering his shoulders, a pile of firewood in his arms. Candles flickered along the windowsill behind him, casting warm light across his strong, rough features. "I thought you might need help," he said simply. There was no pride in his voice, just quiet concern. He entered, placing the firewood near the hearth and lighting a small stove. Within moments, warmth spread through the room, chasing away the chill. Timofey's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Papa, you're amazing!" he said, running to hug Ivan around the legs. Ivan froze for a heartbeat, unfamiliar with this kind of closeness. Then he bent, gently resting his hands on the boy's shoulders. Ekaterina watched silently from the doorway, her heart catching in her throat. She had asked him to pretend, to play a role for her son's sake. But now, she saw something real in the way he moved, in the way Timofey looked at him with unguarded trust. For the first time in over a year, her house felt like home. After the storm passed, they sat together by the fireplace. Timofey, half asleep with his head on Ivan's knee, murmured, "Don't go, Papa." The words were soft, but they struck Ivan harder than any axe swing ever could. His chest tightened. The boy's trust, so freely given, awakened a longing in him he hadn't felt in years, a desire to belong, to protect, to love. Ekaterina knelt beside them, placing her hand on Ivan's. Her voice was quiet, trembling slightly. "You protect us like you're really ours." Ivan looked into her eyes, raw emotion breaking through his normally stoic demeanor. "Maybe. I want to be," he whispered. The night stretched around them, filled with quiet warmth, the snow still drifting softly outside. Ivan realized that this pretending, the act he had agreed to out of kindness, was no longer an act at all. It had grown roots in his heart, entwining him into a family he hadn't known he needed. And in that moment, with the fire casting shadows on the walls and Timofey sleeping safely in his arms, Ivan felt something he had never felt before. He was home. Spring arrived early in the village of Lesnoy. The last patches of snow melted into streams that ran through the narrow wooden streets, and the birch trees whispered softly as their first green leaves emerged. The air smelled of damp earth, fresh pine, and the faint smoke of chimneys. For the first time in years, Ivan Karolin felt a lightness in his chest that he had long forgotten. Life seemed full of color again, not just shades of gray and silence. Ivan decided he wanted to do something special for Timofey. He ventured into the forest, choosing sturdy pine logs, and began to build a wooden swing in the yard of Ekaterina's house. His large hands worked with precision and care, though the muscles that had grown, strong from years of lonely labor, ached with the effort. The sound of hammering and sawing echoed softly across the yard, mixing with the gentle songs of birds returning to the trees. When the swing was finished, Timofey's excitement was unstoppable. He ran to Ivan, eyes sparkling. "Mama, look! Papa made it for me!" he shouted, throwing his arms around Ivan's legs. Ekaterina watched from the doorway, her chest swelling with emotion. She had asked Ivan to pretend, but this moment showed her that something real had grown between them. She stepped closer and gently touched Ivan's hand. Her voice was soft but steady. "We started this as pretending," she said, "but if you want, we can stop pretending." Ivan paused, his gaze moving between Ekaterina and Timofey. His heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. Then he spoke, voice low but certain. "I want this. For all of us, forever." Timofey laughed and jumped into Ivan's arms. Ekaterina joined them in a hug, feeling the warmth of family wrap around her like a blanket. Around them, the forest was alive with the soft hum of spring, the bird song, the rustle of leaves, the gentle sunlight filtering through the branches. In that moment, the lonely lumberjack was no longer alone. He had a place where he belonged, with people who loved him for who he truly was. And the widow and her son had found what they had longed for, a home filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Spring had arrived not only in the forest but in their lives, bringing a new beginning, a new family, and a future full of hope.